Okay, good morning. So this week we're going to be focusing on inferences again. If you remember from last week, we had a review of inferences. We looked at some pictures and we talked about how inferencing is also called drawing conclusions. So sometimes a question will ask you to infer some information and sometimes it will ask you to draw conclusions. It all means the same thing, and what it means is an educated guess. So to make that guess, we use what we know and what the text says to create an inference. So last week we were able to do it with the house, the children, and a short passage. So we are going to continue this work through this week for inferencing, and everybody needs to make sure that they are taking their standards mastery on iReady because I don't have any submitted yet from this class. So we need to get that done. But for today, we're going to start our inferencing lesson with a BrainPop video. So I'm going to go ahead and play it, and then we'll get into the text.
You wrote a story? I looked around the packed theater. My knees were shaking and my heart was pounding in my chest. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. I pretended I was alone and played my violin. Great job, Moby. I really understood how nervous you were, even though you didn't say you were nervous. I made an inference. What is an inference? When you infer, you use clues and what you already know to come up with an idea. I've heard that sound before. It's thunder. Everyone's wearing rain boots and jackets and holding umbrellas, so I can make an inference that it's raining. I don't really know for sure that it's raining because I'm not outside, but the thunder and the rain gear are clues, so I can be pretty sure it is raining. How can I make inferences when I read fiction?
So take a second to think about that. How can you make inferences when you read fiction? Now remember, fiction is a text that is fake. That's how I always remember it. Fiction and fake, they both start with F. So fiction is a story that is not real. How could you make an inference in a fiction text?
Let's see. In this book, the tortoise and the hare have a race. The hare makes fun of the tortoise and says she's really slow. Instead of preparing for the race like the tortoise, the hare just talks about how great he is. During the race, the hare is so sure he'll win, he thinks he has time for a nap. And the tortoise wins the race. The way characters act can tell you about how they think or feel. The hare makes fun of the tortoise, brags a lot, and then falls asleep during the race. These clues tell me that the hare is kind of stuck up and thinks he'll win the race. The tortoise gets ready for the race, ignores the hare, and goes as fast as she can. These clues tell me that the tortoise is really determined. Authors use clues and details so they don't have to write everything in exact words, and figuring out how the characters feel can be exciting. But I can make inferences in all kinds of writing, not just fiction. How can I infer when I read nonfiction?
So you need to think about, since when you're reading a fiction text, a lot of the time you're going to get your inferences from the way the characters are acting. Now, in a nonfiction text, that's like an informational text, you don't always have those characters that are going to be able to show their feelings through actions. So think in your head, what's one way that you could infer with nonfiction?
Cool, here's a book about sea turtles. Leatherback sea turtles lay their eggs on land. One leatherback can lay over 100 eggs. I wonder why sea turtles lay so many eggs. You can use what you already know to make inferences. I know that seagulls like to eat baby sea turtles. And I know that the ocean has other hungry predators. I can infer that sea turtles lay a lot of eggs because most of them will not survive. You can also use what you observe to make inferences. Ew, I bet all that trash doesn't help the sea turtles. Maybe that's one reason why they're endangered. I guess making inferences is like being a detective. You look for clues and put them together with what you already know to come up with an idea. I guess I can infer that it's time for lunch. Hey, wait for me!
Okay, so from that, we can tell that you can make inferences in both fiction and nonfiction texts. When it comes to fiction text, a lot of the time you're going to make your inferences from the way the characters are acting because they might not come out and say exactly what they are thinking or feeling. In informational text, that's when you're going to go back to using what you previously know, what the text says, and then for informational text, a lot of the time you're going to add in things you observe. All of those work together to make your inference. So with that, let's look at a few pictures and see if we can make an inference on those pictures. Okay, so here we have a picture of a dog. I see your, oops, sorry. Okay, we've got a picture of a dog and a roof. Now, let's see. Use this photo to answer questions about making inferences. To choose a question to answer, drag and drop the dice from the question into the box. Then click next to the box and start typing your answer. You must choose at least 4 of the questions to answer below. So I'm going to go ahead and start with question 1. I'm just going to drag my dice. And then it gives me a text box to write in. So what do you think is happening in this picture? To me, let's see, I think that the dog escaped and climbed onto the roof. I need a little more information in this picture because I know that dogs can't climb that easily. So let's work through these other questions and see if it helps us come up with an inference. Okay. How do you think the person, people, or animals feel? Well, if I look, oops, sorry guys. If I look at this dog, it almost looks like he's barking and howling. So I think that the dog may be scared to be up so high. Make a list of the details in this photo that provide clues about what is happening. Let's see. I see the dog is probably the biggest clue there, and the fact that he's on the roof. This picture is hard to make an inference from because I just need more information. And that's really when the text is going to come in handy. So if we were going to answer where was this photo taken, it's taken outside on what looks like the roof of a house. Why do you think this event occurred? And that's where you could use your creative thinking to think, how could a dog possibly get up on the roof like that? Now let's try one like this. Same thing. So, what do you think is happening in this picture? I see a student with her hands on her face and her elbows on her knees. That tells me, her body language tells me that she's upset about something. So I think that this student, and I can tell she's a student because it looks like she's in a classroom, she's wearing a backpack. I think that the student is upset about I could even make it more specific, about a test score. Or maybe someone was teasing her, but I don't see anybody else in the picture. So anything in the clue that gives you clues in these pictures are going to help you make an inference. Now let's look at our text. All right, and I know this seems a little spotty, guys, but I had it planned to go live, but something came up and now we're doing a recording. All right, let's make my screen bigger. Okay, so now we're going to try to make an inference from a text, and this is an informational text. So, this is called Staying Cool in the Desert, and the first thing I want you to think about is, what things do animals need to survive? So as you're thinking about that, you're probably going to say things like water, you might say food, and shelter, a place to keep them safe from the outside. Shelter, keep them safe from storms and heat and things like that. The shelter. So our task today is we are going to think about, what things do animals need? We know that from our background knowledge right here. And we need to find out, what things do animals need that are going to be hard to find in the desert, and how do we know? So if you are going to build your answer, be sure to look up here in the strategy frame. So it says, the text says blank. I already know that, so I can infer blank. This will help you if you're struggling to get an answer for your inference. So I'm going to go ahead and read it out loud, and then work through it for you to watch. And hopefully you're going to do this along with me. The desert is no easy place to live. Very little rain falls. Few plants grow. During the day, the desert becomes very hot, yet hundreds of animals live there. How do they stay alive? To live in the desert, animals must stay cool. So they have developed some interesting ways to stay safe in the heat. Many desert animals hide underground to escape the heat. They usually have strong claws. The kangaroo rat is one example. It digs a tunnel or burrow. It hides there during the day. It comes out at night to hunt for food. Other animals that dig burrows include Gila monsters. And if you're ever come to a word that you don't know, I'm not that familiar with that word, but luckily they gave me a pronunciation guide. So this way, when you look at these, you just say the letters exactly how they appear, and it will give you how you say this word. So I have the Gila monsters. So the Gila monsters, iguanas, and desert tortoises. A type of owl also hides underground, but it does not dig much. It lives in burrows made by other animals. Other desert animals have special bodies that help keep them cool. For example, a desert jackrabbit has huge ears. Its ears help heat escape from its body. Ground squirrels have bushy tails. They use their tails for shade. Long legs can also help lizards. Lizards use their long legs to run quickly over hot sand. Most desert animals are also pale. Light colors